Hello and welcome to everyone. It looks like, I believe everyone who I saw get registered is on here, so I believe we can get started. A little bit of housekeeping, of course. If this is a time that you're joining me, this may look a little bit familiar if you've been to one of my webinars before, because this is essentially one of the first, it's similar. I've made a couple adjustments. One of the first webinars I gave at the very beginning, because this is an important topic and I think people need the rehashing and to be reminded again of some important parts of protein and battling the protein burnout. So welcome. And of course, as always, there is an opportunity at the end to submit questions or even comments. At the bottom left hand of your screen, you should see a button that allows you to do Q&A, and you can submit either anonymously or leave your name. If you do leave your name, I will likely say it out loud just to make sure that you know that I'm addressing your question. So let's get started. The adage that I like to always include, of course, is that the quality of your calories matters. That's why we're focusing on protein, because we want to make sure that we're getting in high quality calories, even when we're eating fewer throughout the day. In fact, when we're eating fewer calories, the quality becomes even more important. So what we're going to cover today is why we focus so much on protein in the first place. And is there any science behind some food aversions if we're feeling like we're not interested in eating protein anymore when it previously wasn't a problem? I also listed out a few anecdotal reasons that people have given me for not wanting to eat protein. And I have a few solutions that I'm going to list, and I look forward to any solutions maybe you have that I haven't included in here. And as always, I'm happy to answer your questions. So, a quick little review here. Why protein? Why do we focus on it so much? And I even saw a clip of someone making fun of dietitians where essentially we're saying, eat your protein every 5 seconds. But the review here is, protein is very important for maintenance and also prevention. Those are the two sort of broad topics. So the maintenance of your muscle mass, lean body mass, which can keep you healthy, but also can help maintain that metabolism. We're looking to continuously burn calories as we lose weight. And if we can maintain the muscle mass, we'll be able to burn more calories doing that. And this can also help maintain your overall immune system and help fight off or prevent getting sick. And I know we're coming out of the winter, but that's still always an important thing. And prevention. So preventing any hair loss, prevent skin or nail problems, because protein helps make up those components of our body among many other parts, and preventing fluid buildup, or otherwise known as edema. And I know I said this last time, I'll say it again, of course. Edema and fluid buildup is not always related to a lack of protein, but it can be a contributor. So is there any science behind protein aversion if it seems very specific to protein or other foods? Well, we already know that weight loss medications cause your appetite to be reduced through that gut-brain communication. So we've already got a lower appetite. And then physically speaking, normally your stomach is going to be emptying more slowly. So appetite and desire to eat anything is already reduced. And then there were a few studies that involved weight loss medications, and they didn't really narrow it down to protein, but there was decreased preference for high-fat, non-sweet foods listed. And also in a different study, the people verbally reported decreased preference for both high-fat and sweet foods. And again, I know this doesn't really say protein, and in fact, some of these almost sound like the snack foods that would be ideal to avoid. However, especially the second one with the sweet foods, as you know, many of the protein supplements that we try to focus on often are trying to taste like cookies and cream or chocolate or some other sort of dessert flavor. And if the sweet foods don't sound good, that doesn't sound too great either. So there may be a component there. But what about what other people are saying just in general? I've heard some people say, I'm sick of it. I'm sick of having to think about the protein all the time. I'm tired of eating chicken every day, or I'm tired of eating fish, whatever it may be. Also, nausea is certainly a complaint that comes up. And if you're nauseated, I can't think of a single protein containing food that sounds good at that time. Of course, most food doesn't really sound good either. Some people have commented about taste changes. It just doesn't taste the same. And then others find that it's just too much planning involved. Say that you have a very busy job or you're on the road constantly and you have to think about, what am I going to pick when I get where I'm going? Or will I be able to find protein here? And it's just a lot to have on your mind. And say you come home at 8 p.m., you don't want to have to think about creating a large menu with all that protein. So there's some really real world reasons you may not be interested or want to not think about that, anything but that. And of course, there's something else, something I may not have mentioned that may be something else that you relate to that might have you not as interested in consuming protein right now. So let's think about a few solutions, because it's hard to get around it and we're still going to sort of push for it, but let's try and find some solutions to address the protein situation that maybe you haven't thought of. But maybe you'll have some answers that I haven't thought of either. So one of them is to swap. So think outside the box, think outside of what your normal routine is. And thankfully, that booklet that you likely got through Premier Weight Loss, page 8 has some wonderful, simple protein swaps. I know there's one with Greek yogurt instead of sour cream, and some other swaps that I don't think were listed there, but I'm listing here. Use hummus instead of mayonnaise for your sandwiches, or roasted chickpeas, or some seeds for a salty snack if you're not wanting sweet. Or you can try a keto cereal like Magic Spoon. I know some people who love Magic Spoon. It's very high in protein. They are more on the sweet end, but there's that option too. If you're used to cereal in the mornings, you don't want to have to do eggs, because that's often what I tend to suggest. And I know that that's not always real life. So if a cereal is where you are, then try something like that. I will mention, just because things like hummus, you can think, oh, well, that's only 2 tablespoons. That might be a few grams of protein. What's the point? But the point is, you don't have to try and cram in 30 grams all at once or 15 grams. Every little bit is some protein that you wouldn't have had before. So it can all add up to the big picture at the end of the day. So don't poo-poo the 2 grams here and the 2 grams there if it sounds good at the time. Also, you can switch. So I think we always think about animal protein. I think our first thoughts are chicken, fish, beef, but plant-based proteins are an option. I know at first that doesn't sound appealing because people think about that, the tofurkey or some gross plant-based protein they had to eat when they were a kid that was not good. But thankfully, things have changed, and we're actually coming across plant-based protein recipes that are appealing and do taste good. And I do have some examples of other plant-based proteins on the next slide. I also thought about portability for this presentation, because I think one of the biggest problems is, where do you bring it with you? You're not going to have a George Foreman in the back of your car. You're not going to be ready for a steak or something like that. So finding packaged versions of items you can snack on is a really great option. If you like tuna, it's not my thing, but packaged tuna, there are some very easy tearaway packs that even have different flavors, and that is extremely healthy and very portable. You don't have to refrigerate it. Crunchy edamame, I actually got to try some of this at one of the Premier Weight Loss clinics when I visited the other day. It was delicious, and it was 11 grams protein in a tiny little pack. I also know that they offer those Quest crackers. So again, if you're not interested in sweet, there is a protein-based cracker. And hard-boiled eggs, you can boil them yourself. And granted, these aren't really shelf stable, if you will, but if you're just going somewhere, you can bring a hard-boiled egg with you. And they do sell them in packs of, I believe, 2 in grocery stores pretty ready. So you don't even have to deal with the annoying peeling of the egg if you don't want to. Jerky is also an option. Some of them are a bit higher in sodium and sugars, but there are a couple out there that are better. I know Perky Jerky is a decent brand, and there's one called Kalahari, I believe, and that one's actually no or low added sugars. It's a bit more pricey, but it looks like a very high quality jerky out there. And then even Parmesan crisps. Again, it's not the highest in protein product, but it's healthier than standard potato chips, and it might satisfy that salty craving that maybe you have. And then finally, changing up your supplements. So I've got a couple examples of some supplements maybe you haven't heard of, and that's coming up in the next couple of slides. So like I mentioned, the plant-based proteins are an option that you can add some variety to your diet. And I can leave this open for a little bit in case you want to take a screenshot. This lists out some plant-based proteins in the legumes, beans category, and I listed out the serving sizes and how much protein it would provide in grams per serving. So tempeh is essentially a fermented soy product. It's got actually a very good texture. I enjoy it. And then there's the tofu or lentils, so lentil soup, and on through edamame, peanut butter, black beans, etc., etc. Also seeds, nuts, and grains. Seitan, just in case no one knows, seitan is actually gluten, so that's used as a meat substitute. It is just pure gluten, so of course if you have celiac or a gluten sensitivity, don't choose that, but it is a good protein source. Pumpkin seeds are delicious, and of course, quinoa, while it's considered a pseudo grain, it's a complete protein, which there are just a few of those in the plant-based world, and so that's a really good option as well. So feel free to try some of these out. Also, changing up your protein supplements might be a good idea. I've heard from many people that the milkshake styles that we're all used to, the cookies and cream, like I mentioned earlier, or the chocolate, which are delicious, but maybe it's just overdone. Maybe you've had your 100th for the month or for the year and you're ready to change. So some things that have come out that are a bit newer on the field, or at least it seems a bit newer to me, are these protein waters that exist. So IsoPure ready to drink protein water and Protein 2.0 are some that are readily found that you can find online to order. And also Ready Protein Water is one that I've actually tried and ordered. I know some people who've used that and they enjoy it. They are larger bottles, but if you're trying to drink some fluids and also get in protein, it's a nice little 1-2 combination there. And you may have seen, if you've visited the Premier Weight Loss offices recently, that there is a clear protein powder out called Rule 1. And I know they've offered a few samples, and I've even tried it myself. It tastes great. There's no lingering protein jello-y, I suppose you could describe, flavor. It's really pleasant. And those are also clear powders, and the Seek was listed on page 9 of your booklet. That's why I put that here. So those would be worthwhile to try as well. Also, if you're not looking for something cold, there are some hot options. So there's broths and soups, as well as hot drinks. So I've listed a couple here to the left as images. So Unjury, they have these even half servings of these protein powders that can turn into broths essentially, or a soup base. One of them, I believe, is supposed to, yes, French onion soup. And then Berry Wise is a brand that makes these hot chocolates. I think they make one that's flavored perhaps like cappuccino. And those, I know someone who used that and she said they tasted great, and she actually would drink one every night before bed, and it was her routine and she really enjoyed that. So if that sounds good, that might be something to try out. And of course, pages 9 and 34 give some great examples. Again, that's in that booklet from Premier Weight Loss. So they offer some really great examples if you haven't tried any of those already. So feel free to use that as a resource because they have some excellent things listed out there. And what about you? Is there anything that you've tried that we haven't, that I didn't list here? And what are your thoughts? Feel free to share the good, the bad, the ugly. And if you have any questions, this is your time. And it looks like something has already come in. Okay, So, do you like replacing unhealthy snack foods with protein snack foods that are still high in sugar? Thinking protein muffins, chips, and stuff instead of muffins and chips without protein. Ooh, that's a very good question. And I'm gonna have to look up some of those. So actually, and there's gonna be a cat that comes through in case you see a tail in the image here. So I will say this sort of it goes in ranking in my mind here. So protein snack foods that would normally not be, so muffins and chips without protein, those would be the lowest rank because you're not getting a whole lot of nutritional benefit at all in that category. However, if you're looking at protein snack foods that are high in sugar, it's not ideal, right? And so, well, would I prefer it to the normal one? If that's the only difference, yes, I would say that's better than, say, the original. However, there are some protein snack foods that are lower in sugar. And so if you have a specific brand or product that you are interested in, but would like it to maybe not have so much sugar, please let me know because I'd be happy to find something for you. Because a little bit of sugar I think is manageable, but if it's really high in sugar, then it's not exactly an ideal solution. Better than none, but I'm sure we could find something even better that would be lower in sugar. But that is a good question. And I hope I answered that. But please, if you do have questions about specific brands, you can either let me know on here or send that to the Premier staff because I'd be happy to answer that separately. But thank you for the question. It is a bit of a ranking system, I think. Let's see. Are there any other questions that come to mind? Or, like I mentioned, what about clear proteins do people like? How are they different? Okay, that's also a very good question. So essentially, probably what I've noticed, and this is all just feedback from people, is either I've heard people say they don't like chocolate, they don't want to taste the chocolate milkshake, or they don't like vanilla, they want to taste something fruity or something different. So for whatever reason, just that milkshake flavor is not appealing. So the clear proteins are a way to get away from that sort of classic milkshake, milky texture flavor experience. And so the clear protein is closer to water. In fact, some of them are so thin that it's almost like, I know the rule one I can definitely relate to because I just had that, so it's very recent in my memory. Those clear proteins are almost as if you took a I'm trying to think of the name of those packets that people, Crystal Light, there we go. It's almost as if someone took a Crystal Light packet in water and flavored it that way. But rather than just being a flavoring, you're also getting in that protein and you're getting up to 15, 20 grams per serving. So that's that alternative that people might like. It doesn't mean that that's what you have to pick, but if that is more appealing than, say, Fairlife, Core Power, or some of those powder mixes that have that milkshake-like flavor, then that's a good alternative to go. But a great question because, yeah, it's always nice to know what the appeal is and why that would be better. And the only thing is it's about personal preference. So thank you for asking. And by the way, if anyone has had a chance to try certain protein brands, even if you didn't like them, feel free to volunteer that information because I think it's great for people to know what has tasted good, what hasn't. And just because I might like the way something tastes or I think something's a good product, I think it's always better that someone has a real life experience or some real life feedback because again, everyone's tastes and preferences are different. So I think it's always good to see the whole breadth of people's experiences and what they like and dislike. Let's see here. Ah, Nurse at Premier pushes little protein shots that they sell. Thoughts on those? Ah, yes. Okay. I believe you are talking about the bariatric pal. They're sort of in maybe just under 3-ounce containers. And so, yes, in fact, you almost read my mind a little bit here. So, this is a good topic to touch on. So, what I love about those is that it is a smaller quantity. So, especially if your appetite is lower and you don't want to fit in more, it's a good way to get in practically the same amount of protein. I believe they've got 15 and 30 gram protein per serving. So that's quite a bit to fit in that amount. And so you're able to get it in, get it down, get moving. And so I think that they're pretty good and they don't taste bad. And I think that's the bigger selling point because taste is paramount. By all means, try before you buy it, try one before you go full throttle on a whole case, if you will. But I think those generally taste pretty good. That being said, there are some protein shots and small amounts of protein types of supplements that aren't very good. And that's when you're getting down into the 1-ounce quantity. One that I'm thinking of in particular is called Liquicell. Liquicell is a more of a medical food. It's something that I have experience with some of my other previous jobs for people who need a protein supplement and can have very little fluid. And the problem with that is it's such a concentrated form of protein that, like I commented on that Jello flavor, if you can imagine that sort of smell and flavor, but then concentrated, it's almost overwhelming. And then to try and compensate for that, they will sweeten it to a point that is pleasant for some, but for me personally, it was overwhelming and almost a bit um, overly sweet to the point of just feeling like you're drinking syrup. So the little protein shots I think are fine because it's still a normal consistency where it can taste good and it doesn't feel like you're trying to drink something thick and cough syrup like. But when you might find those itty bitty protein quantities, that's when the flavor might get unpleasant. So thank you for helping me segue into that, and I hope that helped answer that question. I am loving the interaction tonight. It's fantastic questions. Thank you so much. Let's see, are there any other that coming up here? I should mention that if uh, if you do have a question that you think of afterwards, or if you would just rather ask it offline, which is perfectly fine, by all means, feel free to reach out to the Premier Weight Loss staff. They can get in touch with me if they can't answer it themselves. But I will be happy to address any questions or any concerns apart from this as well. So if anything else comes up, be my absolute pleasure to address that. Not a problem whatsoever. Let's see here. I will likely wait for just a few more minutes, just to make sure in case anyone's typing anything out. And while I do that, I hope that everyone did okay during the storms on Sunday, and I hope tomorrow is not as treacherous as it has been as it has come across. So I hope everyone stays safe and dry. I suppose buy your protein now if you need to. Excellent question again. What do you think of cottage cheese as a protein source? I think it's delicious. And cottage cheese was actually promoted, I believe there's some history behind that. It was promoted during one of the world wars, because, of course, with rationing, trying to make sure that there was enough protein for the soldiers, but just general rationing, cottage cheese was used and advertised as a good, complete protein for everyone back at home trying to support the troops and making sure that we're still staying healthy. So there's even a historical aspect to the cottage cheese. But yes, I love cottage cheese. I think it's a great protein source. You can add a little bit of fruit to it to add some interest. I know Breckstones sells those individual containers of cottage cheese, so you don't have to have a large container, and that one is actually a 2% fat, so if you don't like the high fat type of cottage cheese, it's a really good option, and it's very high in protein, and you also get the casein and whey combination for protein there, in case you were curious. And so I think it's an excellent, excellent option. That being said, I know there are some people who do not like cottage cheese for whatever reason, texture or taste. And so I know it's not for everyone, but it's probably one of my favorites. And a small little aside, I think one of my great, great friends, she was a roommate with me in college. We had bought a 5-pound container of cottage cheese, and I think we both, I don't know who ate more of it, her or me, but we definitely polished that off, made short work of it pretty quickly. So we were definitely proteined out for that week, to say the least. I've yet to see that kind of size of container ever since then, but it's a fun memory for me anyway. Oh, and yeah, I should mention too, I've seen recipes where people will take cottage cheese and they'll actually blend it with eggs or uh, and then maybe cook it in a pan, and so they almost make like crepes that are higher in protein than a standard type of crepe that you would make. So it does have some utility in that aspect too. Again, I appreciate all the questions. They're very, very helpful for everyone. So thank you, always. Well, we're almost at the half-hour mark. So I will probably be wrapping this up. Of course, feel free to stop me in the interim, but I do appreciate everyone joining this evening on a rather pleasant Tuesday night. I hope to see you in the next ones. I know next week it'll be on Wednesday evening, and then we'll have a few in the middle of the day, mid-morning after that. So I hope everyone has a lovely evening. And if you haven't had dinner yet, then keep tonight's topic in mind, and I suppose do your homework on that tonight. And if there's anything else I can do or anything that the Premier group can do, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us at any time. It's such a pleasure, always a joy to talk to everyone who is interested in these topics, and I love learning and studying it, so thank you very much. I hope everyone has a great night. I'll see you all later.